The night was brittle with cold, and Thomas Harper said, "Who could be knocking at this hour?" He pressed his palm to the peeling wood of the old farmhouse door, his breath trembling in the stale silence. The wind clawed at the cracked shutters, groaning through broken hinges. He forced himself to lift the latch, whispering, "It's probably nothing." His hand trembled as the door creaked open, revealing a man on the porch whose face was his own. Thomas staggered backward, heart hammering, whispering, "This can't be real." The other Thomas tilted his head and smiled, an expression that felt borrowed, too slow, too deliberate. The silence broke with a faint drag, like something wet being pulled across boards inside the house. Thomas said, "Why are you here?" But his voice was swallowed by the still air. The double stepped forward, the same eyes, the same scar on the chin, as though the night had grown a mirror with flesh. The wind carried a whisper, hoarse and hollow. "Thomas Harper." Thomas Harper stumbled back into the hallway, whispering, "This isn't real." The farmhouse groaned, walls straining as if the house itself listened. His pulse thundered as the silence pressed down, heavier than the cold. From the porch came another knock, softer, mocking. Thomas said, "You're not me." His voice cracked, and the double's whisper seeped through the wood. "Thomas Harper." His breath hitched as he pressed against the peeling wallpaper. Every corner seemed to breathe with shadows. The floorboards beneath Thomas Harper moaned as he backed away, the echoes too sharp, as if two sets of footsteps followed him. He turned toward a cracked mirror on the wall, only to see his reflection blink a moment later than he did. His voice broke, "Stay away from me." The reflection smirked while his real lips trembled. The farmhouse whispered as wind pressed through holes in the boards, carrying his name again, Thomas Harper. Thomas Harper's knees buckled as he stumbled into the living room, whispering, "This house is wrong." Dust swirled in faint moonlight, bleeding through broken curtains. The air reeked of rust and rot. From the window, he glimpsed his double standing on the porch, motionless, waiting. "Why won't you leave me?" he gasped, clutching his chest as the air thickened. The silence fractured with a dragging sound inside the walls. Thomas Harper pressed himself against the couch as the dragging sound grew closer, rhythmic and wet. His throat tightened as if invisible hands pressed against it. The wind rattled the windows, and the bulb above flickered in stuttering pulses. He gasped, "What do you want?" The answer came not from outside, but from the dark beneath the floorboards, whispering his own name in a rasp that bled with malice, "Thomas Harper." Thomas Harper pressed his back against the couch, whispering, "It knows me." The farmhouse swallowed his words, every shadow trembling with life. He dared to peek through the cracked curtain, and his double still stood on the porch, unmoving, grinning faintly. The smile widened when Thomas whispered, "Leave me alone." His pulse drummed in his throat as the silence broke with another knock, this one softer, almost playful. The double's eyes never blinked, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Thomas staggered back and shouted, "You're not real." The walls groaned as if disagreeing, dust falling from the ceiling. The farmhouse seemed to breathe with the rhythm of his fear, the air colder with every step. The silence stretched and Thomas Harper whispered, "What do you want from me?" His voice broke as his double's shadow lengthened unnaturally across the porch, stretching across the floor. The air vibrated with the sound of dragging wood, though the double never moved. Thomas's chest tightened as his mind clawed for reason. His thoughts twisted, each heartbeat pounding louder than the wind outside. He gasped, "You can't be me," but his own reflection in the window whispered back with lips that moved too late, "Thomas Harper." He stumbled, clutching his temples as whispers filled the room like smoke. Thomas Harper staggered into the hallway, his breath ragged. The cracked mirror loomed again, and this time his reflection smirked before he even approached. He whispered, "Stop copying me." His voice faltered as the reflection raised its hand a moment sooner than he did, mocking his movements. The sound of laughter echoed faintly inside the glass, not from his throat, but from something deeper. His hand shook as he reached toward the mirror, but the reflection pressed back with force, rattling the frame. Thomas cried out, "You're not me." The mirror splintered further, yet the reflection grinned wider. The farmhouse floor creaked as Thomas Harper backed away, shadows crawling with every flicker of the bulb above. From outside came the faint crunch of footsteps, though the double never left the porch. Thomas whispered, "Someone help me," but only the empty house answered. He grabbed the old rotary phone on the wall, spinning the dial with shaking hands. But the line was dead, hissing faint static. The static warped, forming his own voice whispering his name, Thomas Harper. He hurled the phone aside, glass shattering on the floor. His double outside tilted its head, as if listening to the sound with satisfaction. Thomas Harper stumbled into the kitchen, gasping, "You won't take me." His hand clutched the countertop, the wood slick with condensation, as if the air itself sweated. The double's shadow seeped under the doorframe, too long, too sharp, moving independently of its source. He pressed his back against the cabinets, whispering, "This can't be real." The refrigerator hummed louder, then cut to silence, leaving the sound of his pounding heart. From the darkened window above the sink, the double's face appeared, lips whispering his name without sound. Thomas's knees weakened, dread consuming him as the glass frosted over. Thomas Harper stumbled into the yard, clutching his chest as the night closed in around him. He whispered, "I have to get away." The farmhouse groaned behind him, its windows glowing faintly as if alive. On the dirt road ahead, a lantern flickered, carried by Daniel Cross, a local drifter with haunted eyes. Daniel said, "You saw it, didn't you? The one that wears your skin." Thomas staggered and demanded, "How do you know?" Daniel's voice cracked as he muttered, "Because it came for me once, and I'm still running." The silence deepened, carrying the weight of truth. Daniel Cross lifted the lantern closer, his face carved with old fear. He said, "It's not just you, Thomas Harper. It copies anyone it touches, but it always chooses the weakest moment to step in." Thomas whispered, "Why me?" Daniel's gaze darkened and he muttered, "Because it needs someone broken enough to accept it." The farmhouse door slammed behind them without wind, the sound hollow like a coffin lid. Both men froze as the double stood motionless on the porch, watching. Daniel Cross grabbed Thomas Harper by the arm and said, "Listen to me, the longer it stays, the more you fade. Memory's voice, even your place in this world." Thomas trembled, whispering, "It smiled like me, but wrong." Daniel's lantern flickered as he muttered, "It smiled like me once too. I lost everything." The night wind howled, carrying whispers of their names in a chorus. The double tilted its head and whispered faintly, "Thomas Harper," and then Daniel Cross. Thomas Harper's voice broke as he said, "How do I stop it?" Daniel Cross lowered his lantern, shadows deepening across his face. He muttered, "You don't stop it. You resist it until it finds another soul to feed on." Thomas gasped. "That's not an answer." Daniel looked away and whispered, "It isn't one you want to hear." From the tree line a figure emerged, Eleanor Blackwood, a reclusive woman long thought lost. Eleanor said, "It doesn't leave, it consumes." Eleanor Blackwood stepped closer, her voice trembling. "It took my brother." He screamed until there was nothing left but silence. Then his reflection walked home instead. Thomas Harper recoiled, whispering, "That thing wants my life." Daniel Cross muttered, "It doesn't just want it, it will take it." Eleanor's eyes glistened with grief as she whispered, "Once it learns your name, it already begins." The farmhouse lights flickered, though no one touched them, and the double raised its hand in a mockery of a wave. Thomas Harper clutched his chest, whispering, "It is inside my head." Daniel Cross raised the lantern, muttering, "It always finds a way in." Eleanor Blackwood shook her head and said, "You should never have opened that door." From the farmhouse window, the double leaned closer, its face pressed against the glass as if mocking. Thomas shouted, "Why won't it leave me alone?" The silence fractured when the window cracked with no touch, the sound splintering into the night. Eleanor whispered, "Because it never leaves. It replaces." The farmhouse door groaned as it opened slowly, without anyone touching it. Thomas Harper froze, whispering, "No one touched it." Daniel Cross shouted, Stay back! Eleanor Blackwood muttered. It doesn't listen. A child's whimper echoed from inside, though no child had been there before. Thomas whispered, "Who is that?" The sound rose into a scream, sharp and terrified. Eleanor's face drained of color as she said, "It found another." Thomas staggered forward, his heart torn, but Daniel pulled him back, yelling, "It wants you to follow." From the shadows inside stepped Sarah Miller, a neighbor who had gone missing weeks ago. Her eyes were wide with terror as she cried, "Help me, it won't let me go." Thomas Harper reached out and said, "Sarah, come here." Daniel Cross whispered, "That's not her anymore." Sarah's voice broke into sobs. "It wears me when I sleep." Eleanor Blackwood shouted, "She's already taken." The double stood behind Sarah, smiling Thomas's smile, raising a hand in perfect mimicry of his own. Thomas Harper shouted, "We can't just leave her." Daniel Cross snapped, "It's already too late." Eleanor Blackwood whispered, "This is how it binds you." Sarah Miller screamed, her voice twisting mid-cry into Thomas's voice, pleading, "Please save me." Thomas staggered back, covering his ears as Sarah's face flickered between hers and his own. The double whispered in unison, "Thomas Harper." Daniel shouted, "Don't listen." The farmhouse lights flared, then died, plunging them all into suffocating darkness. In the choking dark, Thomas Harper whispered, "I can't tell who's real anymore." Daniel Cross muttered, "That's how it wins." Eleanor Blackwood clutched his arm and said, "You have to hold on to what you know is true." Sarah Miller's voice echoed, layered with Thomas's, "Let me in, let me in." The double stepped from the shadows, smiling, its eyes reflecting lantern light that wasn't there. Thomas gasped, "It already has me." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Thomas Harper whispered, "It is stealing me piece by piece." Daniel Cross said, "That is what it does. It feeds." Eleanor Blackwood's voice trembled, "It already knows more about you than you know yourself." Sarah Miller sobbed, her voice warped as it broke, "It lives in my skin when I sleep." The double stepped closer through the doorway, every feature perfect, every movement too smooth. Thomas gasped, "It wants my life." The air grew heavy, pressing against his lungs as if the house itself tried to suffocate him. Eleanor Blackwood raised her hand, whispering, "It cannot exist without someone to take." Daniel Cross shouted, "It wants to erase him." Thomas Harper gasped, "I can feel it inside my memories." Sarah Miller screamed, "It is inside all of us." The walls shook violently, dust raining down as the farmhouse groaned like a living thing. The double tilted its head and whispered in perfect mimicry of Thomas's voice, "Thomas Harper." He staggered backward, clutching his temples as the voice echoed inside his skull. The lantern flames sputtered, plunging them into pulses of shadow. Daniel Cross muttered, "It is eating the light now." Eleanor Blackwood whispered, "It doesn't want light. It wants form." Sarah Miller wept, "It took my brother's form too." Thomas Harper collapsed to his knees, crying, "It is inside my name." The double stepped forward, the sound of its boots echoing without weight, and said in Thomas's voice, "You don't need to exist anymore. I already am you." The words wrapped around his ears like a chain. Eleanor Blackwood's eyes welled with tears as she said, "It doesn't kill you. It unravels you until there is nothing left but its reflection." Daniel Cross shouted, "It has done this before. I saw it take my sister." Sarah Miller screamed, "It is already in his blood." Thomas Harper stared at his own trembling hands, veins pulsing with unnatural rhythm. He whispered, "It is becoming me." The double leaned forward, smiling Thomas's smile, and whispered, "No, you are becoming me." The air grew suffocating as the double stretched its arms wide, its shadow splitting across every wall. Thomas Harper's breath hitched, whispering, "I can't stop it." Daniel Cross raised the lantern, shouting, "Resist it or you vanish." Eleanor Blackwood cried, "It never stops once it knows your name." Sarah Miller collapsed to the floor, sobbing, "It will take us all." The double's voice filled the farmhouse, echoing in every corner. Thomas Harper is gone. Only I remain. The silence afterward was unbearable, broken only by the sound of Thomas's choking sob. Thomas Harper gasped. It is inside every shadow. Daniel Cross shouted, do not look at it directly. Eleanor Blackwood cried, it grows stronger with your fear. Sarah Miller's voice cracked, it already wears my dreams. The double stepped forward, every flicker of lantern light bending around its form. Thomas whispered, it is already me. The walls pulsed like veins, the farmhouse alive with his dread. The air was suffocating, pressing down until every breath felt stolen. The floorboards split as if something crawled beneath. Thomas Harper screamed, it is tearing the house apart. Daniel Cross muttered, no, it is tearing you apart. Eleanor Blackwood shouted, hold on to what is real. Sarah Miller collapsed, sobbing, it already took my name. The double whispered in Thomas's voice, Thomas Harper, and the sound echoed like thunder inside his skull. He dropped to his knees, clutching his ears as blood trickled down his face. Thomas Harper crawled backward against the wall, whispering, it is stealing everything I am. Daniel Cross clenched his jaw and shouted, fight it! Eleanor Blackwood muttered, he cannot fight what already owns him. Sarah Miller sobbed, it is too late. The double leaned closer, eyes reflecting lantern glow that did not exist. It whispered, your memories are mine. Your face is mine. Your life is mine. Thomas slammed his fists against the floor, screaming, no! Eleanor Blackwood shouted, you cannot let it finish. Daniel Cross said, the moment it takes the last part of you, you vanish. Sarah Miller screamed, that is what it did to me. Thomas Harper pressed his hand to his chest, whispering, I can feel it eating my heart. The double smiled with his exact expression and whispered, your heartbeat belongs to me. The walls shook violently, rattling with every beat as if echoing his surrender. Thomas Harper collapsed, whispering, I am nothing without my name. Daniel Cross raised the lantern, shouting, resist or vanish forever. Eleanor Blackwood cried, once it finishes, you cease. Sarah Miller sobbed, it already has him. The double crouched before Thomas, placing its hand against his cheek in a perfect mimic of tenderness. It whispered, you are gone. I remain. The lantern shattered, plunging them into suffocating darkness, and the only light left was the glimmer in the double's eyes. Thomas Harper whispered, it has already taken too much. Daniel Cross shouted, you must fight even if it breaks you. Eleanor Blackwood cried, he cannot fight what he has already become. Sarah Miller sobbed, it is already inside him. The double crouched low, its face identical to Thomas's, whispering, you are not real anymore. The farmhouse walls buckled inward, beams groaning, shadows twisting like vines. Thomas screamed, I will not vanish. His words echoed hollow, as if spoken by both himself and the double at once. The lantern shattered fully, plunging the room into pure darkness. Daniel Cross cried, it wants the dark. Eleanor Blackwood whispered, darkness is its womb. Sarah Miller screamed, it will be born again through him. Thomas Harper felt his body jerk as if pulled by invisible strings. The double's voice thundered, I am Thomas Harper now. He gasped, you cannot take everything, but his own voice sounded distant, stolen, hollow. The farmhouse seemed to collapse into itself as the shadows swallowed the light. Thomas Harper slammed his fists to the ground and shouted, I am still here. Daniel Cross yelled, do not surrender your name. Eleanor Blackwood cried, that is all you have left. Sarah Miller whispered weakly, it is too late. The double pressed its hand against Thomas's chest and whispered, you are mine. A violent shock rippled outward, shaking the entire farmhouse as if the earth itself convulsed. The air froze, breath hanging like smoke. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone. Thomas Harper gasped as his reflection flickered across every surface, mirrors cracking, windows warping. He whispered, I am not gone yet. Daniel Cross shouted, Hold on! Eleanor Blackwood pleaded. Do not let it finish. Sarah Miller cried. It will eat us all. The double's grin widened, teeth too sharp now, its voice layered with countless echoes. I am every Thomas Harper that has ever lived. The walls shattered outward, spraying glass and wood into the storm. As the storm calmed, only silence remained. Daniel Cross whispered, Thomas Harper. Eleanor Blackwood muttered, he is gone. Sarah Miller sobbed, it took him. From the broken doorway, a figure stepped into the rain. It looked like Thomas Harper, but the smile was too calm, too deliberate. The double whispered, I am home. Daniel dropped the lantern in despair as Eleanor turned away in horror. The night swallowed the farmhouse, leaving only the sound of rain and the quiet breath of something that should not exist.